So, is anyone aware of the site Slideshare? Yeah? You understand Slideshare? So the idea of Slideshare is that you can put your presentations up on there and anyone can access them because you make them open access. If you set the settings right, then they can download it. If you don't want them to download it, or you want it in a certain format, or you're protecting images like I tend to do, then I tend to upload it as a PDF so that it still works in the same way, it still works as a SlideShare, but the images I've used and stuff can't be downloaded and so somebody else just use my work in that regard. They actually have to put some effort in themselves. Although if you do go on SlideShare, you can download other people's presentations. So one thing I do on social media is I try and do I write a weekly blog on research, and I try to translate, well, currently books, but book chapters, academic work into usable forms for my key audience, which are teachers. And what I wanted to do is find a way of doing that with my research and look at the impact that might have on the work that I was doing. So I'm talk specifically about this paper, which was published in January 2015, and my co-author and I, Vicky, had a very specific strategy in mind when the paper came out. So when the paper came out, we wanted to simultaneously broadcast it across different networks. So not only did we want it to come out on the journal's update or the journal page, we also wanted a strategy for, right, this is coming out, how do we, from the off, create a digital impact for it? So we reread our paper now, and we actually went through and we highlighted what we thought were key messages. We found rereading the paper to be very useful because how long is it between acceptance and publication? So we couldn't remember the key messages, and nor could remember the key quotes that we thought were significant for our audience. So the first thing we did was we read our paper. And I want to give you an example of this notion here of academic. So academic and social learning. So that was one of the phrases that made it into the final presentation. So having read the presentation, the paper, and picked out these key ideas, what we then did was put them into a Word document. So we now had the paper from a PDF to a Word document, and that's why you were asked to bring some of your research with you, to allow us to start to do a little bit of this, to reread your work, to go through and have a look. So we ended up, so we're tracking through from our reading of the paper, which is here, and this is the genuine PDF that we use. I didn't just pick up another one and try and do it again. So this is the PDF we used, it translates into here, and it made it onto the final process. And then we had this Word document. And then we transferred that into a SlideShare, and we're literally, these are the messages. And we had to take them down, otherwise you end up massively long quotes of yourself. And this notion of academic and social learning ended up on this slide. So this notion of we need to focus on more than just physical learning outcomes. So there's a little translation, but it was trying to get the message in terms of how we brought that through. And then when the paper came out, we were ready, so to speak. Now between us we have nearly 6,000 followers on Twitter, because we do a lot on social media. We have the blog, we have all that sort of audience. But we targeted, it wasn't haphazard, it was a very deliberate attempt to increase the impact of this document. So this was a month ago, and it was being viewed, and I've just checked it, it's now 1,700 times. So this paper has now gone from its potential audience to 1,700 people. Okay? Now I'm going to give that I checked this because I'm interested, so I'm going to take 50 of those myself. And I'll give 50 to Vicky because she's probably checked it as well, because we like the figures. So let's take, we're on 1,700, so we're still beating this number. Okay, so we've got those types of views. And it's a PDF, but people have downloaded it. So it's now in a different form going elsewhere. So that in itself was worth the time and effort to do this. We now know that this research is out there. I'm on ResearchGate, I don't know if you guys are on ResearchGate, but one of the papers I get the most requests for is this one. Now that's anecdotal, it could be purely coincidental, it's just been an outstanding paper, but it could be a little bit to do with my social media, or our social media accounts. So yeah, that's just in case you couldn't read this one, I never know on the side of the screen. So this is a link to the presentation, and I'll share it with you, but I don't necessarily want to go into it now, but I'll show you a little bit of it, I suppose. And this is where I work out that I can't actually do it on here. Anybody? Can't. If I click now, it will just yet. Okay, so we can do that, and if you want to at some point have a look, I'll show you what it is. 40 slides, it's all very high impact, I think, in terms of what we did. But the question is, how does this translate into the paper itself? Because ultimately, I didn't do it just to share a SlideShare and spend hours doing it. So how does it enter into the paper itself? Well, this is the paper here, and that figure's changed, and since I did this last Friday, it's now 334. And we get this notion of what's happening in the rest of the journal. So this paper is now 10 times more downloaded than the others. Now there are other papers in the journal, and I've just checked. The highest one has got 120 downloads or views. So even on that figure, we're at nearly 340. So we're nearly 3 times as big. My maths isn't brilliant. So just under 3 times in terms of its impact. Now that has come from a strategy of understanding what it is that we wanted to do. We didn't just release the paper. I've also just checked the journal, and I don't know about you guys, but the publisher that I tend to work is Taylor and Francis, and it's their education section, which is Routledge. And when you're working with that journal, you get 50 free e-copies. And I've just checked on my thing, and I could show you, and I'll show you later. It lists all your publications, and you can see, and you get 50 free shares. I've just been on all of my papers. I don't have a single e-copy left. So that's a strategic aim. With this paper, the 50 we both had, so that was 100, were exhausted within 24 hours. So we're not sitting on any stuff that we can legally share. We can put it on the university's online system, and we can now begin to direct people to that. But the strategy's in place. We can always use the SlideShare as an example of what the key outcomes are. People in reality can cite us and our paper based upon what we gave them in the SlideShare. So now it's broken down that paywall a little bit in terms of, it's not sat on the publisher's site, it's not locked behind the ability to pay. That information is out there, but it was a strategy from day one. We have another paper coming out. We know it's coming out in July. We're already now starting to talk about, okay, so what's the SlideShare going to look like? How are we going to get this? So when simultaneously we get that to come out, we're looking in those